Welcome everybody. So this is a presentation, red pill or blue pill. It's kind of a play on words. This is about contractual deliveries. We're talking about, listening to Brittany talk about all the different deliverables that are coming or that they define in a project. We didn't really talk about the process of actually amalgamating those deliverables, getting them, who they're coming from. So this presentation is about kind of just, it's really going to be about, just implications of what delivery method you choose, what contracts you choose, how that affects delivering BIM or asset or whatever. There are implications that come with those kind of decisions. So I'm Dan Doherty. I'm manager of integrated construction technology at PCL. That's a fancy way for saying BIM and other stuff. And I'm also a director of building transformations for the last couple of years. I've been involved for what used to be CAN-BIM for almost a decade now. So we've been touching on this subject a lot over the last few years, but it's always been on the mind for the last decade. Is how do we get to those point? And in industry, we are sort of constrained as to what how we go about delivering projects. And now with these new deliverable or these new requirements for digital deliverables or BIM, we sort of have to bolt those on to what we already know. And this is just a presentation about kind of what the implications of that are. So really, the takeaways are, the learning outcomes would be how information is exchanged, updated, aggregated throughout the value chain, when the information is generated or captured, and really why the choice of stakeholder engagement carries such big cost implications. So all the assumptions of this presentation are based around there is going to be some sort of digital deliverables. It's going to be a record model or an as-built model, which we'll get into, or some sort of asset data. I have COBE in bracket or in parentheses, or sorry, quotes there, just because that's a lot of times that's what we get asked for. That's the extent of what we get asked for. Do BIM, want COBE. And that's kind of what we get in RFPs, and we have to sort of start from the scratch. So the key to making all of this work is we can absolutely get as-built model or asset data. It's just how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. We see a lot of challenges in the industry where we get asked for things, but going through the costs of supplying that information at the end, the majority of the time the owners will change their mind halfway through that exercise because, oh, we had no idea what this is going to cost. Why is it not putting the information here instead of here? Isn't it that simple? And it's not that simple, as we're going to see. So really, when we're looking at asset deliverables of models or data, we have to make it cost effective, not just for the client, but for all the stakeholders, because nobody wants to spend more money than we need to. So we're not going to get too much into this, but we have all our standard contracts. If you're not familiar with them, there's a website up there. These are our contracts in conjunction with different procurement methods. And combined, some of these contracts are combined into different delivery methods. Depending on what your circumstances are and what you choose really leads to kind of your four big delivery methods. What we see, I understand there's more. Today we're going to go over design build, construction management at risk, design bid build, construction management at risk, design build, or integrated project delivery. Just talking about how each one of these decisions will implicate how we deliver projects. So we're going to meet our stakeholder group here. Very simplified stakeholder group. These are really the main players, and I've generalized into one stakeholder group. And just to make it a little less matrix, we're going to add a few things here. I've always told client is royalty, so we're going to give the owner a crown. The designer has a pencil, of course, and the trade as their hard hat. And then on the bottom, just kind of as a reminder, sort of our standard delivery phases. And this changes. There's there's variations, but really we're looking at schematic design, design development, contractual documents. There's a bid, there's a build phase, and then operate. Understanding that this changes a little bit. all with the assumption that we want to take that operation manual and work back to any kind of renovations. It really is a cycle. It's not a single phase to an end. It's a cycle. Once you hand over to the owner, they're going to go back to, they're going to renovate, they're going to get different designs. They really want to use that information to go back to schematic design and integrate in. So we're going to start design, bid, build. This is, we're going to start with design, bid, build because this is really, in terms of collaboration, this is the worst case scenario, I'll say. So, all familiar with design, bid, build. We have an owner with different contracts, with a contract to the design consultants and another to the general contractor who doesn't talk to each other. General contractor has stepped some contracts down to trade contractor. I'm just going to go over a little bit of legacy workflows. We all understand how this works, but it's important to kind of differentiate or compare to a digital workflow. So really design consultants and a design bid build, they really work in a silo. I drew a bubble because it's easier to draw in PowerPoint. Same thing, it's they work by themselves in a bubble, you know, architectural, structural. I see my formatting got messed up a little bit, I blame Sergey. You know, all the design consultants, they work until they have a finished design. They chuck it out to the market at 100%, quote unquote, 100% design. General contractor goes to trades. All the different trade companies, they get pricing for. You know, eventually we have a price tag on that building. You know, the owner says, yep, good, that meets our budget. Go ahead, start constructing. Or if it doesn't meet budget, then no, we go back into the design consultants, and usually during construction, we start a value engineering process. So we are value engineering 100% design during construction. Not the most efficient way to do it, but this is usually what happens with the design bid build. Now we're looking into information exchange in the design bid build. Obviously it's drawings. With design drawings, we go over to the trade contractors. They, you know, with their scope, they turn design drawings into shop drawings as they procure equipment. You know, they as they procure all their equipment and everything for the project. Some of it, you know, what's not in their shop drawings, it might come in PDFs. You know, any kind of asset data. You know, equipment plates is a JPEG. All that other information that comes from the trade contractor and manufacturers. Basically changes everything in that design. That they turn their shop drawings, the contractor scribbles things and turns it into as-built drawings, and then we go back to, if they're contracted, back to the design consultants that change their original design drawings into record drawings. A little bit of redundancy there, I would say. So on top of that, because there is siloed in our stakeholder groups, we have different kind of document control systems that we aren't talking to each other. So design consultants have their own, trade contractors have their own. General contractors have our own, and we work in our silos. So usually information is exchanged through emails. It used to be fax, but turned to email or screenshots. I've got scribbles taken with a picture that's emailed to me. It just is a very messy way of communication, document control. You know, as things get generated, there's errors, there's duplications. Just, again, not a very efficient process. So this is where we are today. We take design drawings, turn them into shop drawings, we turn them into as-built drawings, and turn them into record drawings. We get a wheelbarrow, we throw it all in there, we haul it over to the owner, and you know, we dump it on Brittany's doorstep. Maybe not exactly like that, but you know, it's a mess. We have a lot of disjointed information. We have no idea. You know, the owners have no idea. You know, what to go for, because really they have. You know, it's a big mess of manuals, drawings, updated drawings, shop drawings, right? And this is why we're trying to figure out, or this is why it is so expensive and takes so much time after the handover to organize all this information. So there we are, we're left with the client that doesn't really understand, you know, what they're getting, and it's going to take a long time. So digital project delivery, what we're trying to do is make this whole process a little more efficient. We want to take as-built drawings or record drawings, and we want to be able to have an as-built model or a record model. I have those in quotes because I'll get into it a little bit, but right, the difference, what's more accurate, the left or the right, right? You know, what's going to tell the story better? You know, quite honestly, this is what as-built drawings look like, and so if you're going in there to try to find a dimension, it's maybe not the most you know, reliable or the most efficient to do. So what the key is, you know, we're looking at our old workflow of drawings. We want to be able to take those drawings, as Brittany said, they're not going away anytime soon. They are contractual. Even with any kind of asset management, we still have a contractual obligation to produce drawings. But now we have, a BIM. Just to simplify things, we're going to just call it, a Revit model, a BIM. Architectural, structural, mechanical, other. We want to find a way to take that drawings and BIM and pass it on through the life cycle in order to add to that information, in order to, update the information into one central database. What the key to all this? We want to be able to pass that torch, take that information in BIM and be able to pass it to the next person, eventually getting to the client in a way, shape, or form that adds a lot of value. Just when you thought we were done with this conversation. The tool we have in industry for handoff of digital information, model information is LOD, right? The assumption of as you go through the phases, it's a linear process, a little more information is added, we answer some questions, a little more information, a little more accuracy in the geometry, until the end, you have a LOD 500 field verified, key being we don't define what the tolerances are on this as-built model lot. We sort of hang our hat on field verified LOD, and that's what's asked for, and the assumption that it comes with all these great things. Architectural structural works a little better. When we start getting in mechanical, this is where it all falls apart. In my mind, and I'll keep in mind, this is my perspective, this is where I see the biggest challenge in this LOD handoff, is the assumption that it's a linear progression. We're taking, we know sort of what that piece of equipment looks like, we can add a little more detail, we hand it off to the trades at LOD 300, 350, which interfaces with other building components, if you're unfamiliar with the spec. Right until we hand it over. But here's an example of an LOD quote unquote 300 model on your left and LOD 400 model on your right. My question is, if there's so much changes between design and actual construction in your model, what's an LOD 350? Like how are you interfacing your LOD 300 with building systems when LOD 400 is completely different? Is absolutely completely different. Not one thing is the same in either of those models. So it's not a matter of handing off, adding some more information, and then handing it off again. It's a matter of stopping, finding out what's different, starting over, redrawing, remodeling, recoordinating. So the key becomes how do you amalgamate this information? How do you reconcile everything? We have designers that they know a piece of equipment and how much error it's going to take to get from point A to point B. That's going to have some parameter data to it. We hand it over to the trades. They actually get an actual piece of equipment with an actual dimensions, with a little more parameter data, with also PDF cut sheets with JPEG. So now what do we do? What's the as-built model? What's the record model? How do we just swap out the different models? How do we do that, right? If the designers are responsible for a record model, are they going to update every piece of geometry to what the trades are actually building for that record model? Again, depending on kind of what tolerances are asked for. So where's your record model? Where's your as-built model? You might not agree with me here, but typically on mechanical, especially mechanical electrical, we'll get a design model that'll have 80% of the information in it, but none of that geometry is usable. It's intent. So then we get into the trade model, and they will add a little more information, but that's 100% of geometry. So now we're trying to reconcile information and geometry into one database of a model. It's a really challenging thing. There are ways to do this, but it's a very prohibitive workflow. So again, in a digital project delivery and design bid build, we still work in a bubble to 100% because we have to go low bid. We heave the drawings out at 100% and add a model in some way, shape, or form. Usually that model comes with a contract that says, here's our model, don't use it for anything, refer to drawings, drawings dictate, don't look at the model, so on and so forth. So now, we have to take that model, we have to go to the trades for the same thing, to price it all. But if you're going to if an owner is looking for a digital asset in terms of a model or an as-built model, they have to write that into the scope. Otherwise, how do you get the trades to price it? We need information from them. We can't just say how much it is to build this building. It's how much to build the building with the model, with all the coordination time, with all the data collection. And you go through all the trades that you might need this from, it adds up. So the point is when we're starting at, and this is kind of the whole point, when you're starting at 100% design drawings, passing it off to the trades, and then adding all that scope to try to reconcile it, right, there's a huge amount of rework because you're starting at 100% and you're working back from zero because, we're designing on assumptions, essentially. We don't know what that equipment is. We know, what it's supposed to do, but we don't have the exact geometry or anything for that. So, quick takeaway, design, bid, build. Trade involvement only at 100% design causes a huge amount of rework. Reconciling models at 100% with 100% design is logistically challenging and typically cost prohibitive. And if there are any digital deliverables, they need to be defined enough to price. If we're going to go to market to get a low, for low bid to get trades on board, we need enough for them to add a price to it. And this is just a side note, this is a huge problem in the industry. We don't ever get those definitions for trades. So we say, you shall model. And that's not defined enough. There's no asset data. There's, they don't know how to price it most of the time the trades don't have the capacity, so there's third-party costs, so on and so forth. It adds up. If it's undefined, we usually just drop it halfway through because everybody's scrambling trying to figure out what to do. Construction management. A little different. So, I mean, adjust a little bit here. We, in terms of fighting with designers. But, honestly, the struggle is real. There's always some adversarial there. We have different, on a construction management, we're all pointed in the right direction, but there's different differences of opinion. And I'll say, the consultants that we work with, we all are very admirable, and we sit down and we chat, and we all come to a solution. But that doesn't mean there's not conflict there. Construction management is, the owner has a separate contract with the designer, general contractor, but the difference is we can move, or the general contractor gets involved a lot earlier in the process. Usually in construction management, it's the reason for construction management is has to be done fast, there's a schedule constraint, or there's a budget constraint. Typically it's both. So the point is we take the general contractor, we move them earlier in the design process, which depends on the owner, how early they want to get the GC involved, to be able to value engineer as we're designing. So the designers are modeling, the general contractor is pricing as they're modeling or designing. We can make changes on a fly based on prices. So the theory being at the end, come construction, we have all that value engineering out of the way, and what usually happens is we roll it up into a guaranteed maximum price. So that's called Preconstruction Services. General contractor to be on board early with the designers to provide pricing information, so as the come to construction, they can roll it up into a guaranteed maximum price, see step sum, it goes right back to design bid build, usually in that, no, sorry, not design bid build, usually a step sum. So we still have to go out to trades to low bid. Just because they are giving us pricing doesn't mean that they're part of the project. We still have to go to market, especially if owners dictate that they need low price procurement. So the other side of that is fast tracked. So what that means is the same thing. General contractor is brought on board early to start doing the value engineering, but construction is happening at the same time. So as we're designing and value engineering, every once in a while we spit out a scope of 100%-ish to the trades to price, and they can go build. So it's called sequentially tendering. We're getting trades on board just in time based on how the design is progressing. Usually we're starting to build designs around 50-60%. So you can see as we're trying to reconcile information, when the design is only 50%, we have a design model, construction model. It again becomes very challenging in terms of how to reconcile that information, especially when there is no time to update your model before you're constructing. You're getting a contract, you're going to build. So when we're looking at digital project delivery, not drawings, design, we're trying to use that information, that BIM information through a CM. Same thing, we're working that model. We still have to tender documents. So we still send out documents, but maybe that model we actually send out to the trades to add that into their scope. But the point is we're still getting trades on board at 100%, and all those changes that happen between 100% and construction still have to be reconciled back into a model database of some kind, right? Plus all the PDFs and anything else that comes along the way. So what CM allows us to do is get a centralized document control system, something like BIM 360. It's not the only one, but we can keep our documents in the same place with the rest of the stakeholders group. It mitigates some risk. It keeps duplication low and errors low, but just having the general contractor kind of on board early adds that opportunity. Also, adds the opportunity to common data environment. A centralized document system is one thing, but an actual common data environment where you can look at models and information, anything you need within one environment that everybody can plug into, right, your DROFSs, your Ecodomus, more recently Autodesk Construction Cloud, something like that, as long as there's budget in the project for that. This is something we can introduce to keep our trades kind of in touch with what's going on with the overall design model. I know they're still pricing off documents, but when they come on board, we can feed them into a control or a common data environment, and that information is not in paper form, it's in digital form where everybody can get a hold of it. So construction management, digital project delivery, right, we have a little more opportunity. We can have one central space, common data environment where we can do our models, we can change our models, we can swap them out, we can get the information, we can aggregate it. Biggest challenge is we still have to go low bid. So we're still pumping out 100% drawings of a certain scope to go get a price, to get a certain trade on board, and we're starting over again from that point. So the biggest challenge that is the time it takes. So getting a trade on board to start a model, to change from the manufacturer information he's getting, in a fast-tracked construction management project is extremely challenging, if not impossible. It's usually you get the trade on board 2 weeks out there they're building, a week out there they're building, the next day out there they're building. It depends on how tight your schedule is. So in order to model, coordinate, get all the asset data in a common data environment, it doesn't make a lot of sense on a CM, honestly. So construction management, almost always using conditions of schedule or budget constraint. Design is still completed to 100% before trade involvement. And if there's any digital deliverables, again, they need to be defined enough to price as we go out there. The whole point of CM is usually early value engineering can reduce some of that rework. But because we're still taking those drawings at 100% to go get low bid, there's still that amount of rework that's built in. Design build. So this is a lot more collaborative of a delivery, I'll say. That's taking, the owner has one contract with a design consultant and general contractor as one entity, a design builder. Usually we still have these stiff sum contracts with the trades to get them on board. But what that does, so design build is used in a situation usually of a very programmatic building, something with very tight program, but almost always it's has to be done cheap and fast as well. So very specific program, but cheap and fast. What design build does allow us to do is bring that trade contractor into the mix a lot earlier, right at the beginning. In fact, if that's the way the design builder wants to do the project, we can bring key trades on board early, start having some of those decisions, those conversations right away. Right. It also changes the contractual relationship between the owner, design general contractor. We're now, we're joined at the hip. We are one contractual entity that both are pointed in the same direction. There's difference between designer-led DB and constructor-led DB. I haven't seen a lot of designer-led. Usually it's a general contractor-led design build because it's specific. It has to be cost-effective. These things are like hospitals. We see a lot of hospitals design build. So what that also allows us to do is work within the same model. With different models but same environment. We can work within a live environment. Something like Revisto works great, where you have everybody else's geometry information in one common data environment. So as decisions get made and things get swapped out, you're all working on the same playbook. Right. Also, what this allows us to do is get trades on board at 30% design or less, if that's need, not at 100%. So The trades that we bring on board, they're starting to make decisions, they're starting to procure equipment really early in the process, so we can not make so many assumptions with our models. We don't go, plow ahead to 100% and then have to go back. We can, tweak as we go. Again, during fast track, as design build, we still have to, procure other trades, things. We're not going to bring all the trades on board early enough to make these decisions, so we still have to go procure trades. Probably low bid is where it usually goes. Things like millwork or specialty, or ask Chris a little about patient lifts, when they come up. Still some challenges there, but the majority of our big ticket items can be solved early in the process of a design build. So design build, almost always used in the same CM conditions of schedule or budget constraints. Fast track introduces BIM scope gaps from procurement, so that's our, if we're procuring patient lifts at 30% construction, there's going to be some conflicts there. We need to figure that out at the beginning when we're designing our schedule based on sequential tendering in a design build. Some of that scope needs to be brought up in front. So that's just something, a conversation we can have. The opportunity for trade involvement, this is the biggest one in my mind, early in design. That saves a huge amount of rework. Digital deliverables can be reconciled easily in a common data environment. Excuse me. And communication information is definitely more collaborative. Last one on the list, integrated project delivery. This is, I'll be honest, don't have a ton of experience, a few different projects. None have had any kind of, none of the IPDs that I've been involved with had any digital deliverables, so it changes the conversation a little bit, but the opportunities are the same. Integrated project delivery obviously it's a multi-party, poly-party contract. Everybody is sharing risk and reward. You have a project budget, plus you have contingency and profit built in, and it's up to the team to build to that project budget. Anything above that comes right out of the contingency. Anything at excess of the contingency comes out of the profit. So there's real incentive to work together to become cost effective. IPDs, there's different conditions that IPD works, but usually it's a very prescriptive project, has a limited budget. The owner sees opportunities for collaboration. If we talk to each other, it spurs on innovation. And we can have the opportunity to bring even a manufacturer information right into the design process. You can see at the bottom there, it's not really a schematic design contract document, it's just design. And that whole integrated project team moves on when they feel comfortable enough to move on to the next step. Usually with IPDs, schedule constraints aren't as severe, but they are still there. So there is also incentive to move forward. But what an integrated project delivery do is allows us to start with the common data environment, do all the training, get everybody onboarded, figure out what the requirements are right at the start, and work within that common data environment throughout throughout construction to be able to swap out information, format it properly, have the owner in there making sure that they're getting what they need, checking their deliverables along that life cycle. It opens up a huge amount of opportunity. Gets rid of a huge chunk of the rework. It's just, if you're looking at combining digital information early on to solve or to help solve rework, integrated project delivery is probably the best bet because it has that really collaborative nature. So integrated project delivery, trade contractors, this is key, are board right from the beginning at 0% design. Common data environment is right at the beginning. Opportunity to design using actual manufactured equipment information. There is no BIM handoff, so LED becomes kind of moot at that point. The models are kind of developed simultaneously. Communication is contractual and information is transparent, which is also huge. And digital deliverables can be continually audited, validated throughout the process. There is no turning it into paper, putting it in a folder, waiting for somebody to validate it, and then all that change and rework. So all these different contractual deliveries, I hope it was clear, have different implications on how people work together, when they can get involved and how much rework is involved. That has quite substantial implications to the cost and the schedule. So as an owner, when you're looking at defining, or you're looking at your needs of your project and the certain criteria you have for what delivery method you're looking at, I challenge you to put digital delivery in that criteria and maybe consider, what a design build has to do or how it'll affect kind of the delivery, or, how a design build might make that whole process a little more efficient. So it's really just challenging any owners that are looking at different contractual delivery methods, what your needs are, and what the most efficient way to get those are. And that's all I have for you. Any questions?